This is The Toss Up, where we take a look at some of the topics facing the world of college sports and give a little bit of the history behind some of them. We're not trying to change your mind, we just want to dive deeper into the topics that keep you tuned in to the teams you love. College football fans eagerly await the arrival of the fall to welcome the return of the grandest pageantry in all of college athletics. But within a few months comes the lament of winter and the end to the gridiron festivities, but not before the fans are given a slow, extended end to the season that culminates in the crowning of a college football playoff champion. For the average college football fan, that extension to the season features a myriad of matchups and chances to see teams in actions that might otherwise go unnoticed, which is the very reason those games exist. They're designed to ensure that smaller conferences receive just as much primetime exposure as their larger counterparts, without the excuses provided during the regular season about who does and does not matter. When you look at the history of the bowls at the bowl subdivision level, you notice a trend. Southern schools implemented their own bowl games to reward their teams with a postseason when the Rose Bowl was already booked. This is the inspiration behind the creation of some modern-day big-name bowls, like the Sugar, Cotton, Peach, and Orange Bowls, but now you have more bowls than there are eligible teams. Some people see this as a problem. Other people see this as an asset to college football. But at the very least, most people don't know how we got here. But in truth, it all goes back to the same notion of haves and have-nots. Conference tie-ins to bowls meant that teams with winning records were often left out of bowl games because they were not in a conference with a bowl affiliation. This happened often during the BCS era. New rules now mandate that a team with a losing record is not chosen before a team with a winning record. But that has not stopped the creation of new bowls in new locations as college football continues to spread its dominance and influence across the Western Hemisphere. Joining me on the panel is Griffin Weinberg, who is a play-by-play announcer for women's soccer at Indiana University, and Eddie Cotton, who serves as the sports director for WIUX Student Radio. Let's just go ahead and put it out there. Congratulations to the Hoosiers for going to the Foster Farms Bowl. Congratulations to any team that went to a bowl game. But do we have too many bowls going on?
I think there's a little bit too many. There's 40 bowl games, and that just seems like there's too much. You bring it back to the point where you said there's too many bowl games for bowl-eligible teams. Now they have to start bringing in teams that are sub-500, which are 5-7. They should not be in bowl games. You should not be rewarding mediocrity to get into the postseason. For example, last year there were 3 teams that were 5-7, and they went to bowl games. That's the most since 1941. This shouldn't be happening. The postseason should be made for teams that should be rewarded for having good seasons.
As true as that may be, the college football fans tune into these bowl games, don't they not?
When you look at all the college football bowl games that we've had, of course, there are some matchups that are not as good as others. There's matchups with 5-7 teams, 6-win teams, but they're still getting ratings. An average football game, college football bowl game is going to get around a 2.2 rating, which does better than an NBA regular season game. So there's no reason why major markets like ESPN are not going to want to play these games. People are watching, and if you look at the motives behind these bowl games, the teams in the games, the players in which play in these experiences, getting to go across the country to places like California, Las Vegas, these are great experiences for these players. And I don't think that's something that we want to pass up immediately.
Well, it's not so much passing up the experience for the players. As important as that is, there is this perception of, when we have these bowl games, what's the point? Especially when we're going to sit and make the excuse that, the season's too long, who should and should not go to the college football playoff. If you're going to sit and make this argument here, then what's the purpose of having 40 games if all it means is that I'm winning a trophy for the St. Petersburg Bowl or I'm winning the trophy for the Bahamas Bowl?
Exactly. It's just like giving away a participation trophy at this point. And I think that just means that the NCAA is getting a little bit soft.
Well, remember, this is not the NCAA's fault.
The NCAA is creating these bowl games. The NCAA knows that there's a problem with the bowl games too, because they just put a 3-year moratorium on creating more bowl games. They're not allowed to put any more in until after the 2019 season.
But remember, those are corporate sponsors who are sponsoring these bowl games. The NCAA can't say what you can do with your money.
But they have to go through the NCAA to create the bowl game. You can't just have Home Depot saying, let's go ahead and create a bowl game, make the call, and then it's all said and done. You have to go through the NCAA to make sure that a bowl game is happening.
But at the same time, when those corporations are making those bowl games, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, what's the point? If all we're doing is giving out a participation trophy, whether or not the NCAA is at fault, because you know me, I'm not one to blame the NCAA, because as we've discussed on this show several times, the power that the NCAA holds is only granted by its member schools. So if we're going to blame the NCAA for whatever happens, then we've got to blame the member schools for pointing the fingers and then saying, hey, it's your fault that this exists. But you're benefiting off of this, and you're also benefiting off the fact that we blame the NCAA for what goes wrong, and that's not fair.
But it all starts with the NCAA. That's the point I'm trying to make. It all is going to come back to the NCAA. It's like if you have a problem with a team, and the offensive coordinator makes a bad call during a football game. The head coach is the one who's going to take the fall because he's at the top. That's his job. He's the one who has to take responsibility for it. The NCAA is at the top of this, and they have to take responsibility for it.
But is there something that they should be taking responsibility for that's negative? Because if you look at each of these bowl games, Indiana University, for example, there is more meaning than you think. There is meaning to these players. Looking at Indiana University, they have not won a bowl game since 1991, beating Baylor 24-0. So you're trying to tell me that that doesn't mean a lot for them to be able to experience that, try and compete in that level, plus the exposure that teams can get. After Doug Flutie threw that Hail Mary pass against Miami in 1984, they now call it the Doug Flutie effect. Boston College receives 16% more college applications there next year, and then 12% more the year after that. So what these bowl games provide to schools is a chance for exposure and a chance to provide meaning to their players. And why would you want to get rid of that? Why would you want to take something away from college athletes in which we're already questioning the amount of rights they have? We're already questioning everything around that situation. They're not getting paid. Of course, they're getting scholarship. But why take away the chance to take a trip across the country and play for it in a game that, although you don't think it means anything to them, it means a boatload. Walking around this campus, you see former football players on this team wearing Foster Farms Bowl equipment and merchandise because they cared. And that game was competitive. Most bowl games are competitive because they're trying and they want to win these games.
But the only people who care about that Indiana bowl game is going to be Indiana and Utah. Jog, help me out. You were at the game. There were what, 15,000 people?
That many?
Was it that many? It was less, right?
You couldn't really tell how many people were at the game because, in all fairness, Levi Stadium is red. Indiana's colors are a shade of red. Utah's colors are a shade of red. So I'm going to be a little bit lenient and say that there were probably more people in the stands than we give credit. But at the same time, yes, all things considered, there were not that many people at the game.
For these second and third tier bowl games, the only people that care about them are the people who go to that school, the fans who went to that school or who care about that school. Look at it. The Independence Bowl this year between NC State and Vanderbilt. That game got, there were 29,000 people at that game. That's the lowest number since 1998 for the Independence Bowl. In the game up at Ford Field, I don't even remember what the bowl game is called.
There's, I think, one or two. Little Caesars is one of them that's played at Ford Field.
Sure, one of them. It doesn't matter. You don't even know what the names of bowl games are. You could just say a random bowl game right now, and I would believe that that's true because I can't keep track of how many there are. At Ford Field, there was 18,000 people that went to that bowl game, and that's a Ford Field. That's an NFL stadium.
You don't have to be at a stadium to have cared about the game and watch the game. If you look at the ratings on TV, people are still watching these games. Just because they're not making the trip to take a seat in the stadium, we know that's the direction that sports are going in now. People are watching these games, and there's a reason they're being televised over other events. They're getting better ratings, and you look at the revenue that the BCS is bringing in, each conference is bringing in at least $50 million from these bowl games. Why would you ever want to get rid of that opportunity to bring in revenue? Because you wouldn't be making revenue if people didn't care.
I will say this much. If we're going to talk about people caring. This is my main problem with the bowl scenario that we have right now. Okay, we talk about how the season's too long, but when you look at other levels, it's a participation trophy, as you just said. Okay, it's a participation trophy. I would much rather what they have tried to do with the Chick-fil-A / Peach or whatever name they want to come up with for it in Atlanta. But what they've tried to do with that bowl, what they've tried to do with the Orange Bowl, what they've tried to do with the Cotton Bowl is to make them more important games by incorporating them into the college football playoff system. I think that that's something that needs to be done with these bowl games because there's too many of them. They're nothing more than, instead of a kickoff to the season, a fielding of a pass at the end of the season. They're like the last, the 0-0 of the fourth quarter, and they don't mean anything. They don't advance anything on the season. They don't do anything for helping us, increase our perception of the strength or the weakness of any team or anything like that. And a lot of these matchups are kind of sort of lackluster. They don't, like I say, they don't tell us anything because you're putting someone who should be strong against someone who's probably a little bit weak. I mean, let's be real about it. Did anyone really give Indiana a chance against Utah? Because Utah looked like a very strong team, and Indiana looked like a very weak team.
Utah was a top 25 team.
Utah was a ranked team, exactly. And in most of these bowl games, you're getting matchups that you probably would have seen anyway. The only kind of sort of outlier is a Western Michigan going up against a Wisconsin, which, by the way, this is the first year since the college football playoff that a automatic qualifier has beat a Power 5 team. I would like to see more of those automatic qualifiers. I would like to do away, actually, with the automatic qualifiers. Let's open this bad boy up to 8. If we're going to have all these 40 games, let's make all of them mean something. Open this bad boy up and just go for what you know. Maybe number 8 makes it to the championship one year. Maybe number 1 proves its worth and continues on. But at the very least, I'm tired of seeing nothing bowl games. Do I love the fact that Georgia Tech goes to a bowl game? Oh, yeah. But at the same time, there needs to be something else going on.
If you want to open it up to 8 teams, then what are you doing to the regular season? If you look at the rankings, if you look at the 6-team, 7-team, 8-team in the rankings, you're putting in teams with 3 losses into a college football playoff. Do you really think that's appropriate to crown a champion potentially off a team that played the regular season and lost 3 games? If you're looking at the revenue you bring in just during the regular season, every game matters so much every single week. And because of that, people are watching that even more. And if you take that away by expanding the college football playoff, the whole season becomes a mess.
How many teams do we have in the NFL?
32.
How many teams go to the playoff?
4.
If we're going to say that there's too many teams going to the playoffs in college football, then we've got to make that same argument.
Are you talking about the NFL playoffs and how they bring in those teams?
It's fair.
Potentially a fair argument, but if you look at the NFL, it's just such an expansive brand in the first place.
Possibly, but another major topic that we saw this season that we haven't typically seen is a lot of players deciding not to go to the bowl game for the sake of going into the NFL draft. They don't want to get hurt. They don't want to get injured. I was very happy to see that Devine Redding decided to go ahead and go into the draft. I don't know what his decision was when it came to the draft before the bowl game, but I was glad to see him give his teammates one last hurrah. But you don't see that. The Stanford guy,
Christian
McCaffrey, he decided to, I don't want to play with my teammates. Is that fair?
I think it's very fair. If you're someone who has first-round NFL potential, like Christian McCaffrey, he was playing in the Sun Bowl. I couldn't even tell you who they were playing against. You shouldn't play in that game. You shouldn't risk injury because Christian McCaffrey, he's most likely going to end up going in the first round of the NFL draft. At least that's where a lot of people have him going in mocks. If I'm him, if I'm Leonard Fournette, who sat out of the Who Cares Bowl to let LSU play whoever they played, I'm not going to do that because Fournette could go top 10. If you're a big-name player like that, you shouldn't be risking yourself in such a low-tier college bowl game. Now, if you're in the college playoff or if you're in a New Year's Six bowl game, then I think that you should be playing with your team. But if you're Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey playing in bowl games that don't matter, then I think it's very fair that they should sit out those games.
I think that's a fair argument. If you look at college football as a whole, I think something I'm very adamant about is player rights, and they have a lot of money on the line. And probably what's going to have to happen moving forward is there's going to have to be some changes to insurance policies and how teams, if they're able to implement them for their players. But it's not something you want moving forward because it sets a bad precedent. This is the first year we've really seen it where players like Fournette and McCaffrey have stepped away from their final game. And that sends a message to your teammates that's saying, hey, I don't care about you. I don't need you. I'm moving on with my life. I'm moving on to my career. And that precedent, this is only the first year it's happened, can expand to extreme levels moving forward. We could see 20, 30 guys dropping out of bowl games, and that's when bowl games become not important. That's when all of college football almost becomes irrelevant because everyone's just looking for the NFL and treating it just like a minor leagues.
Well, some of these topics, unfortunately, we are going to have to wait for another time. But at the very least, college football fans love it. We can sit here and we can BS and conjecture all we want. The system isn't going to change anytime soon. So, enjoy it while you got it. Tune in. That does it for this week's show. Be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. Until next Sunday, be proud and cheer loud.